You're not leaving until you tell me the truth." Eliana Morgan never imagined that a simple night at Bellini's would end with her facing Dante Castiano, the most dangerous man in the city, across a mahogany desk, her heart pounding, her daughter's safety hanging by a thread. One misstep, and everything she loved could be destroyed by the man who claimed he would protect her. We need to talk about Eliana Morgan, because the night her life changed did not begin with romance and one exhausted mother trying not to fall apart. Eliana was 26, raising her 4-year-old daughter Lily alone, while medical debt sat on her kitchen table like a threat that never left. She worked double shifts at Bellini's, a restaurant where rich men ordered wine worth more than her rent. But tonight she was not serving tables. Tonight she was sitting inside a cold private office, facing Dante Castano, the most feared mafia boss in the city, while he asked why she had betrayed him. The worst part was that Eliana did not know how to answer without destroying herself. Dante stood across from her in a black suit, calm enough to be terrifying. On his desk lay photographs of her meeting a police detective in secret, photographs she had never known anyone had taken. His voice was quiet when he asked how long she had been lying to him. Eliana wanted to say she had only been trying to protect her daughter, but that sounded weak even in her own mind. How had she gone from counting tips at midnight to being accused by a crime lord of betrayal? It started with one desperate decision. 3 weeks earlier, Eliana almost called in sick. Lily had spent the night coughing through a brutal asthma flare-up, and Eliana had slept less than an hour. But medicine cost money, rent was due, and missing a shift meant choosing which bill would go unpaid. She begged her neighbor, Mrs. Patel, to watch Lily, promised to bring home tiramisu, and rushed to Bellini's, with her hair still damp from a 5-minute shower. The restaurant was already full when she arrived, and every conversation in the room seemed to lower at once. Dante Castano had walked in. Dante was 32, handsome in a way that made people look once and then look away, because looking too long felt dangerous. He had taken control of the Castano family after his father vanished 3 years earlier. No one in the city dared ask too many questions about that disappearance. Eliana's manager nearly dropped the wine list when he told her table 7 needed service. Dante sat alone, with 2 bodyguards positioned behind him, both watching the room as if every guest might become a threat. Dante did not speak loudly. He did not need to. The silence around him did the work for him. Eliana walked toward him with a practiced smile and a shaking hand. Dante wore a tailored charcoal suit, a dark shirt open at the collar, and a watch that probably cost more than everything she owned. She asked if he wanted to hear the specials, and his dark eyes locked onto hers with such focus that she forgot the next sentence. His gaze moved to her name tag, then back to her face. A faint smile touched his mouth. "Eliana," he said. She froze. "Name tag," said Ellie. Only her grandmother had ever called her Eliana, and her grandmother had been dead for years. She tried to hide how much that unsettled her. Dante only asked for her recommendation, his voice low and steady. She suggested the chef's special, because it was expensive and easy to remember. He nodded, returned to his phone call, and dismissed her, without looking away completely. Eliana hurried back to the kitchen, feeling his attention follow her like heat. For the rest of the night, Dante held quiet meetings with men who looked nervous even while pretending not to be. Whenever Eliana approached, their conversations stopped. Dante watched her instead. It made her feel less like a waitress, and more like a name he had been waiting to hear. Near closing, she brought him the bill. Their fingers brushed when he took the leather folder, and his hand was warm against her cold skin. Before she could step back, he caught her wrist, not roughly but firmly enough to stop her. His thumb moved over her knuckles, slow and thoughtful. "Pianist his hands," he said. "Beautiful." Eliana's breath caught. She had played piano in high school, before pregnancy, rent, diapers, and survival swallowed that dream. She had never told him that. Dante looked at her as if he could see every life she had lost. Then he said he wanted to hear her play someday, and left a $1,000 tip. Eliana tried to give it back. She chased him outside, past the hostess stand and into the cold night, where a black Bentley waited at the curb. His driver stepped in front of her before she got close. He was polite, almost gentle, when he said Dante Castano did not make mistakes. The Bentley pulled away, and Eliana stood there, with the money clenched in her fist, ashamed of how badly she needed it. She paid for Lily's medicine the next morning. That should have made the tip feel like a blessing. Instead, it felt like the first thread of a net tightening around her life. The next day, a bouquet of white lilies arrived at her apartment. No card, no signature, just flowers so perfect they looked unreal. Lily squealed because they matched her name, and Eliana forced herself to smile. 2 hours later, a baby grand piano was delivered to her tiny living room, fully paid for, with a year of tuning included. Lily pressed the keys with both hands, laughing at the noise. Eliana looked out the window and saw a black SUV parked across the street. That was when the gifts stopped feeling generous. They felt precise, personal, like Dante was not trying to impress her. He was studying where to place the walls. Over the next week, more gifts arrived. Designer clothes in Eliana's size, children's books for Lily, groceries she could never afford, a new inhaler paid for before she even reached the pharmacy counter. Eliana wanted to send everything back, but every box solved a problem she had been losing sleep over. When Dante returned to Bellini's, her manager told her Dante had requested her personally. His voice made it clear refusal was not an option. Twice a week, she served Dante while he barely spoke and watched everything. She hated the fear in her stomach. She hated more that the money was keeping Lily safe. Then came the night her body finally gave out. Eliana had worked a double shift after staying awake with Lily through another asthma attack. Her vision blurred as she placed Dante's dinner in front of him. She heard someone call her name, but the room tilted before she could answer. Dante caught her by the waist before she hit the floor. His voice cut through the restaurant, sharp and controlled, asking when she last slept. Eliana said she was fine. He looked at the dark circles under her eyes and did not believe a word. He threw money on the table, turned once toward her manager, and the man backed away without protest. Eliana argued that her shift was not over. Dante guided her toward the door, as if the argument had already ended. Outside, his Bentley waited. Every instinct told her not to get in, but exhaustion has a way of making bad choices feel reasonable. She told herself he had helped with Lily's medicine. He had not hurt her. Maybe he was dangerous to other people, but not to her. The drive to her apartment passed in heavy silence. Then, just as relief settled in her chest, she saw Marco leaning against a car outside her building. Lily's father, a man who had left before Lily was born and returned only when he needed money. Eliana went cold. Marco looked thinner than before, twitchier too, with his jacket collar turned up and his eyes scanning the street. Dante noticed her reaction immediately. She whispered that Marco was Lily's father and probably wanted cash. Dante's expression changed, so slightly most people would have missed it. Eliana did not. Something hard and lethal moved behind his eyes. He said something to his driver in Italian, told Eliana to stay in the car, and stepped out. Marco straightened when he saw Dante, then lost color fast. Eliana could not hear their conversation, but she saw enough. Marco was not just scared. He looked like a man who had been caught. Marco left within seconds. Dante returned and opened Eliana's door as if nothing had happened. He told her Marco would not bother her again. That should have comforted her. It did not. He walked her upstairs anyway, and when he saw Lily asleep on the couch under Mrs. Patel's old quilt, his face softened in a way that made Eliana's chest ache. For a moment, the feared dawn disappeared, replaced by a man looking at a child as if she were something fragile and sacred. He tucked a loose strand of hair behind Eliana's ear and told her to get some sleep. 3 days later, Marco was found beaten behind a casino. Soon after, custody papers arrived at Eliana's apartment, signed and notarized by Marco himself. Full custody, no contests, no demands. Eliana stared at the documents until the words blurred. She knew who had made it happen. A sensible woman would have run from a crime lord who solved problems that way. Eliana sent a thank you note instead, because Lily was safer and because fear becomes complicated when someone dangerous removes a danger you could never escape. The next evening, a black Bentley waited outside. A new phone was placed in her hand. Dante was already on the line, asking her to dinner. She said yes before courage could stop her. One dinner became another. Dante never called it dating, and Eliana never asked what he called it. He took her to private rooms, quiet restaurants, and places where the staff lowered their eyes when he entered. Security guards shadowed them from a distance. She told herself she was doing this for Lily, for medicine, for safety, for a chance to breathe. But Dante was not easy to reduce to a reason. He asked about Lily's favorite books. He remembered Eliana liked black coffee with sugar, only when she was tired. He listened when she spoke about music. That was what frightened her most. He was not only buying his way into her life, he was learning how to belong there. Then Detective Riley found her outside Bellini's after closing. It was clean-cut, calm, and too friendly in the way men become when they already know they have power. He said Marco's assault had opened questions. He said Eliana might be considered a person of interest. And he showed her photographs of men who had crossed Dante and never looked whole again. Eliana felt sick, but Riley did not stop. He said Dante would destroy her eventually. He said men like Dante did not love women like her. They collected them. He offered protection, money, new identities for her and Lily, and one condition. She had to help him bring Dante down. Eliana refused at first. Riley only smiled and told her to think like a mother, not like a woman being flattered by a monster. He pressed a card into her hand and said Dante's kindness was the most dangerous part of him. For 2 days, Eliana carried that card hidden in her coat pocket. She did not call. But fear works slowly. It waits until a child coughs in the next room, until a black SUV idles too long outside, until a man like Dante looks at you as if he already owns tomorrow. Finally, Eliana agreed to meet Riley in a small diner near the river. She told herself she would only listen. She did not know Dante's people followed her there. She did not know photos were taken from across the street. That was why 3 weeks after Dante first walked into Bellini's, in his office with her heart pounding while he slid a folder across his desk. Inside were pictures of her with Riley. Her hands trembled. She started to say it was not what it looked like, but Dante was already standing. He moved around the desk slowly, close enough for her to smell his cologne and the whiskey on his breath. His anger was quiet. Worse than anger, though, was the hurt beneath it. Dante asked why the woman he had allowed into his life was meeting a police detective behind his back. Eliana told him Riley had cornered her about Marco. Dante's jaw tightened. He asked why she had not told him immediately. She whispered that she was scared. The answer was honest, but it did not save her. He paced like a predator trapped in too small a room, every movement controlled and dangerous. Eliana realized then how deeply he had entered her life in less than a month. He terrified her. He helped her. He made Lily laugh. That mixture was the trap. A simple monster would have been easier to leave. Eliana admitted the police had threatened her, but she also admitted Riley had wanted information about Dante's business. Dante went still. He asked what she had told him. Nothing, she said. Not because she trusted Dante completely, but because she had not trusted Riley either. Dante studied her face for a lie. Then he asked if Riley offered her witness protection, and that hesitation was enough. Dante laughed once, cold and disbelieving. He said Riley did not want to protect her. Riley wanted to turn her into bait. Eliana snapped that maybe bait still had more freedom than a woman being watched, gifted, followed, and slowly cornered. For the first time, Dante looked truly wounded. Then the mask returned. He said she had accepted his gifts, stepped into his car, let him handle Marco, and allowed him near Lily. Every small yes had brought her here. Eliana stood so fast the chair scraped behind her. She told him need was not consent. Fear was not loyalty. A mother taking medicine money for her child was not the same as surrendering her life. The words hit the room hard. Dante did not shout. He simply looked at her, and she knew she had surprised him. Maybe no one in his world had dared say something true to his face for a long time. Then Dante told her Lily was already safe. Eliana's blood went cold. She asked what he meant. He said his people had picked Lily up from Mrs. Patel's apartment and brought her to his penthouse. Eliana's panic was instant, fierce, and clean. She slapped him before she could think. The sound cracked through the office. Dante's bodyguards moved, but Dante raised one hand and they stopped. Eliana's voice shook as she told him never to touch her child without permission again. Dante's expression hardened, but there was something like shame under it. He said Riley had made contact and the risk had changed. Eliana said he had become the risk. Dante ordered the car. The ride to his penthouse was silent except for Eliana's uneven breathing. She was furious, terrified, and sick with guilt. When they reached the ultra-private skyscraper downtown, security scanned them through quiet hallways, private elevators, and doors that opened only to Dante's palm. The place was built like a palace and a fortress at the same time. The elevator doors opened, and Lily ran toward her, shouting, "Mommy." Eliana dropped to her knees and held her daughter so tightly. Lily laughed and complained she could not breathe. In that moment, nothing mattered except the feel of Lily's small body safe in her arms. Lily had no idea anything was wrong. She chattered about Dante's huge fish tank, the spaghetti Maria had made, and the bedroom with lights like stars on the ceiling. Dante stood nearby, unreadable. Maria, his housekeeper, told Eliana that Lily had been happy all evening. That almost made it worse. Lily was safe, yes, but only because Dante had taken control without asking. Eliana wanted to grab her child and run, and helped her settle into the room Dante had prepared. It was beautiful, soft colors, a princess bed, toys, books, and an aquarium glowing gently in the wall. It had been planned weeks earlier. Maria admitted Dante had asked for the room 2 weeks ago, just in case. The phrase chilled Eliana. 2 weeks ago, she had thought she was only having dinner with a man too powerful to refuse. Dante had already been imagining a future for her daughter. The sweetness of the room was real, so was the control behind it. After Lily fell asleep, Eliana walked back to the living room where Dante waited with his jacket off and a glass of whiskey in his hand. She told him his home looked like a gilded cage. Dante looked at the city lights beyond the windows and said cages did not usually come with open doors. Eliana said doors meant nothing when every hallway belonged to him. Dante did not deny it. He told her Riley had been seen speaking with men tied to the Vega cartel and that Marco had not come back because he missed his daughter. Marco owed the Vegas money. He had tried to use Eliana and Lily as leverage to save himself. Eliana felt the room tilt under her. She had known Marco was selfish. She had not known he would trade their child's safety for his own skin. Dante said he paid Marco's debt and forced him to sign away custody. The beating happened later, after Marco broke the deal. Eliana hated the brutality of it, but she could not ignore the truth beneath it. Marco had been a door left open to something worse. Dante explained that the Vegas were pushing into his territory, while a federal task force circled his business. Riley was supposed to be a detective, but Dante suspected he was feeding information to both sides, playing hero in public and broker in private. Eliana asked why Riley would risk that. Dante's mouth twisted. Ambition. Money. Revenge. Men rarely needed better reasons. And he looked at her and said Riley had chosen her because she was Dante's weakness. Eliana did not know whether that frightened or moved her more. Dante told her she and Lily could stay the night under protection, then decide what came next. Eliana said protection was useless if it came without trust. He surprised her by stepping back instead of closer. He apologized for taking Lily without permission. The words sounded rough, unfamiliar, as if apologies were not something he had practiced often. Eliana accepted nothing yet. She only said if he ever crossed that line again, she would disappear with Lily, even if she had to run with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Dante looked at her for a long moment. Then he said he believed her. For the first time that night, the power in the room shifted slightly. The next morning, Eliana woke in a guest room too beautiful to feel real. The closet held clothes in her exact size. The bathroom held expensive face cream she had once touched in a store and put back because the price made her laugh. Every detail was thoughtful. Every detail proved Dante had been watching. She found Lily at breakfast, cheerful in new clothes, asking if Dante would take them to the aquarium to see sharks. Eliana wanted to refuse on principle, but Lily looked happier than she had in months, and Eliana needed answers. She told Dante she would go, but only because she wanted to see how he behaved outside his fortress. They arrived at the aquarium in a convoy of 3 black SUVs. Armed security tried to blend into the crowd and failed completely. It should have been ridiculous. Maybe it was, but Dante changed around Lily. He crouched beside her to point out fish, answered her endless questions, and lifted her onto his shoulders so she could see the sharks glide past the glass. Eliana watched him with a confusion that almost hurt. This was the same man who could order violence with a nod, yet he held Lily as if she were made of light. Maria, standing beside Eliana, quietly said Dante had once had a younger sister named Sophia. Sophia died of leukemia when she was 12. Dante had been 17. Maria said he spent every spare hour at her bedside, reading stories, sneaking her pastries, making her laugh through treatments that stole more from her each week. Eliana looked back at Dante and Lily by the stingray pool. Suddenly, the way he watched her daughter made terrible sense. Lily had touched something grief had kept buried in him for years. That did not make him safe. It did not erase what he had done, but it made him harder to understand and harder to hate. A simple villain would have been easier. Dante was not simple at all. The day might have stayed almost peaceful if Eliana had not noticed the man near the jellyfish exhibit. He wore a gray coat, baseball cap low over his eyes, and he kept looking at Lily instead of the tanks. Eliana's stomach tightened. She turned toward Dante, but one of the bodyguards was already moving. Then Lily dropped her plush shark and darted after it toward the crowd. The man in the gray coat stepped in the same direction. Eliana moved before anyone else did. She ran, slammed herself between the man and Lily, and shouted her daughter's name loud enough to turn every head nearby. The man grabbed Eliana's arm. Dante reached them a second later. What happened next was fast and controlled and terrifying. Dante's guards boxed the man in, the crowd scattered, and Dante pulled Lily behind him, while Eliana shoved the man's hand away. A small tracking device fell from his pocket. Not a weapon, not yet, a warning. Dante's face went colder than Eliana had ever seen it. Lily began to cry, and wrapped her daughter in her arms, whispering that everything was okay, even though it clearly was not. The aquarium outing was over. The danger was no longer an idea. It had reached for her child. Back at the penthouse, Dante disappeared into his war room with his men, until the little girl finally fell asleep from crying. Then Eliana walked straight to the locked steel door and demanded to be let in. The guards hesitated. Dante opened it himself. The room behind him was covered in screens, surveillance feeds, maps, financial records, security footage, and photographs of men whose names Eliana did not know. She stepped inside and told him if Lily was in danger, she had a right to know from whom and why. Dante tried to protect her from the details. Eliana said ignorance had almost cost her daughter today. Dante showed her the footage. The man from the aquarium had been tied to a Vega lieutenant, but there was another connection too. A phone call. A number registered through a shell account linked to Detective Riley. Eliana stared at the screen, feeling cold all the way through. Riley had warned her Dante would destroy her. He had spoken like a savior, but the evidence suggested he had been guiding danger toward her instead. Dante said Riley wanted her frightened enough to wear a wire, desperate enough to accept his protection, and isolated enough to trust no one else. Eliana felt humiliation burn through her. She had nearly believed him. Dante wanted to retaliate immediately. Eliana could see it in him, the violence rising like a reflex. He gave orders in Italian, sharp and deadly. Then Eliana stepped between him and the screen. She told him if he handled Riley the way he handled Marco, Riley would win. The police would have their monster. The Vegas would have their war. Lily would grow up with blood trailing every choice. Dante's eyes flashed. He said Riley had threatened his family. Eliana said yes, and that was exactly why Dante needed to be smarter than his rage. For once, protection could not mean punishment. It had to mean proof. That was the first real test. Dante could have ignored her. Every man in that room expected him to. Instead, he dismissed them one by one until only Eliana remained. His voice was rough when he asked what she wanted. She said they needed evidence strong enough to expose Riley, without giving him a dead body to build a case around. Dante stared at her as if seeing her differently, not as a woman to protect, not as a weakness, as someone who could think under pressure. Eliana realized she was not helpless in his world. She was afraid, yes, but fear did not erase her mind. It sharpened it. Together, they built a plan. Dante would let Riley believe Eliana was ready to cooperate. Eliana hated the idea, but she hated being hunted more. They arranged a meeting at an old church near the river, somewhere public enough to keep Riley cautious and quiet enough for him to speak freely. Dante wanted guards everywhere. Eliana agreed, but only if they stayed hidden. If Riley saw them too soon, he would disappear into the system and return with another angle. Dante did not like it. She could see the effort it took for him to trust her choice. That effort mattered more than any expensive gift he had given her. Before the meeting, Dante took Eliana to the piano in the penthouse. Lily was asleep upstairs. Security had doubled, and the city below looked distant and unreal. Dante asked why she had stopped playing. Eliana almost laughed. Life had stopped her. Poverty had stopped her. A pregnancy at 19, a man who ran away, a child who needed medicine, and a world that punished single mothers for being tired. Dante listened without interrupting. Then he said he could give that dream back to her. Eliana shook her head. He could pay for lessons, buy instruments, open doors, but he could not give back the woman she had been. She would have to rebuild that woman herself. Dante accepted the correction. It was a small thing, but Eliana noticed. He was used to solving problems with money, power, or fear. She needed him to understand that some things could not be purchased, forced, or rescued. If she stayed, she would not become another possession in his beautiful rooms. She would need a voice. She would need work, purpose, and the freedom to say no. Dante asked if she thought he was capable of that. Eliana looked at him honestly and said she did not know. He smiled without warmth and said that was fair. For a man like him, fair was probably a difficult word to hear. The meeting with Riley took place at dusk. Eliana wore a recording device Dante's tech man had hidden inside the clasp of her coat. Her hands were steady until she saw Riley waiting beside the church steps. He smiled like a man certain the story belonged to him. He asked if Dante had scared her enough yet. Eliana forced herself to look nervous. Proof Dante would not find her and Lily. Riley stepped closer. He told her the Vegas could make Dante bleed from the inside, and once Dante fell, she and Lily would be relocated. The word made her skin crawl. Eliana pushed harder. She asked why a police detective was speaking for the Vega cartel. Riley's smile thinned. For 1 second, she thought he would walk away. Then pride made him careless. He said the Castanos had owned the city for too long, and sometimes justice needed help from ugly hands. He admitted Marco had been useful but stupid. He admitted the aquarium incident was meant to scare her, not hurt Lily. Eliana's rage nearly broke her cover. She thought of Lily crying into her sweater and wanted to slap him until his calm face cracked. Instead, she lowered her eyes and let him keep talking. That was the hardest thing she had ever done. Riley told her to wear a wire into Dante's home within 48 hours, or the next warning would not be so gentle. That was enough. Dante's men moved from the shadows, and Riley realized too late he had been recorded, but Dante did not touch him. Eliana saw the restraint cost him. His hands were clenched, his eyes black with fury, but he stayed where he was. Instead, Dante's lawyers stepped forward with federal contacts already waiting. Riley tried to talk, then threaten, then bargain. None of it worked. The recording was clean. The connection to the Vegas was clear. For once, Dante had chosen evidence over blood. That night changed something between Dante and Eliana, not because everything became safe, but because he had listened when it mattered. Riley was suspended first, then arrested quietly before dawn, incomplete and full of phrases like corruption inquiry and organized crime links. Dante's name did not appear. Neither did Eliana's. Lily slept through all of it, curled around her plush shark, unaware that her mother had walked into danger and come back with proof. Eliana stood in the doorway watching her daughter sleep, and felt something unfamiliar rise in her chest. Not relief exactly, not trust yet, but the beginning of both, and did not touch her until she looked at him. That restraint, too, was new. He said she had been brave. Eliana said she had been angry. Dante smiled faintly and told her anger had saved them. Then he admitted something he had not said before. He was trying to move the Castano Empire into legal businesses, but men inside his own organization were resisting. His father-sold loyalists saw legitimacy as weakness. The Vegas saw transition as an opening. Riley had been only one piece of a larger board. Eliana asked if staying with him meant living forever inside that game. Dante did not lie. He said yes, unless he changed the rules fast enough. Eliana asked him to show her everything. Not the dinners, not the gifts, not the soft version he offered Lily. Everything. Dante led her into the war room again and showed her the maps, the accounts, the businesses, the danger lines, real estate, shipping, casinos, nightclubs, old protection rackets he wanted to shut down, illegal imports tied to men who had served his father for decades. Dante explained each piece with brutal honesty. Eliana was stunned by the scale. This was not one bad man deciding to become good because he fell in love. This was an empire built on fear trying to turn, without collapsing under its own weight. The more Eliana learned, the less simple her choice became. Dante was innocent. He had killed. He had ordered beatings. He had made people vanish from his life and his business, not pretend otherwise. The truth landed between them like a stone. Eliana asked if he could stop. Dante was silent for a long time. Language he had been taught, and learning another would not happen overnight, but he could choose when not to use it. He had already done that with Riley, because she asked him to. Eliana said once was not redemption. Dante said he knew. For the first time, Eliana saw a man who wanted to change, but did not know whether change would leave him powerful enough to survive. That was more honest than any promise. She told him if she stayed, he would not hide behind romantic words. He would need to prove his transformation in decisions that cost him something. Dante asked what she wanted from him. She said Lily would never be used, never watched without her knowledge, never raised to think money could replace morality. She wanted a real home, not a fortress in the sky, a normal school, a yard, a life where her daughter could breathe without armed men standing in every doorway. Dante listened. Then he surprised her by offering exactly that. A house in the suburbs, real neighbors, a swing set if Lily wanted one, security that stayed invisible unless needed, his business kept away from their home. Eliana studied him, looking for the trick. He said he had lived his whole life in places that proved his power, but power had never felt like peace. If Lily needed a yard, he would give her a yard. If Eliana needed distance from the penthouse, he would leave it. The offer should have moved her completely. It did not. She had learned too much to be won by promises. Eliana asked what would happen if one of his men betrayed him during the transition. Dante's expression darkened. He said betrayal in his world had consequences. She asked if those consequences always had to be violent. He did not answer quickly, and that told her more than words could. Eliana said this was the problem. If he wanted a clean future, he could not keep using the old language whenever he was frightened or angry. Dante looked away, jaw tight. When he finally spoke, he said mercy could look like weakness. Eliana said maybe real power was surviving mercy. The sentence stayed in the room long after she said it. That night, Eliana sat beside Lily's bed and made a list. Reasons to leave: Dante's past, his enemies, his control, the violence that lived too close to him. Reasons to stay: Lily's safety, Dante's genuine tenderness, Eliana's chance to rebuild her life, and the possibility that she could help turn something dangerous towards something better. Neither column won. Near dawn, Dante knocked and brought coffee and pastries. He looked tired, almost nervous, which felt strange on a man feared by half the city. He asked if she had decided. Eliana said no. Then she asked him what ghosts kept him awake. Dante did not answer right away. When he did, he told her the secret beneath his entire empire. His father had not disappeared 3 years ago. He was not dead, either. He was alive, hidden in a clinic in Switzerland under a false name. A massive stroke had left him completely paralyzed but aware. Dante had faked the disappearance because in their world, illness looked like weakness, and weakness invited slaughter. Eliana was stunned. Dante said every month. He flew to Switzerland in secret and sat beside the father who had taught him cruelty. He read to him, spoke to him, stayed with him. It made no sense, and that was why Eliana believed it. Dante admitted his father had been a hard man, often a cruel one, but he was still family. Eliana asked why he did not simply abandon him the way his father might have abandoned anyone else. Dante said he had thought about it. Then he looked at her and said some bonds were not clean, but they were still bonds. That was the first moment Eliana saw the shape of his heart without decoration. It was damaged, yes, scarred, yes, but not empty. She asked if that same loyalty would hold when life with her and Lily became difficult, ordinary, inconvenient. Dante answered without hesitation. He would die before leaving them unprotected. And that scared her almost as much as doubting him had. She told him protection was not the same as love. Dante said he was starting to understand that. Love for him had always meant guarding, providing, destroying threats before they came close. Eliana said love also meant listening when the answer was no. It meant trusting her judgment even when fear told him to take control. Dante leaned back, absorbing the words like blows he had earned. Then Lily wandered in, wearing pajamas and dragging her plush shark. The room changed instantly. Dante's voice softened as he offered her a chocolate croissant, and Eliana watched her daughter climb into his lap without fear. Lily got chocolate on Dante's shirt. He did not care. She asked if they could live in a house with a yard, a swing set, and maybe a puppy. Dante looked at Eliana before answering. That small pause mattered. He was asking permission without saying it. Eliana told Lily grown-ups still needed to talk. Lily sighed dramatically, then accepted hot chocolate from Maria and skipped away. Once she was gone, Eliana gave Dante her terms. A trial period. No marriage talk. No hidden decisions about Lily. No violence brought into their home. Full honesty about threats. And if Lily was ever used as leverage again, Eliana would leave without warning. Condition. Though some clearly cut against instincts he had spent a lifetime sharpening. Eliana added one more. She would not be an obedient Mafia wife. She would study music if she chose. She would work if she chose. She would speak when she disagreed, and he would not punish her for it with silence, money, or control. Dante almost smiled then, not because he found it amusing, but because he respected the steel in her. He said he did not want a quiet woman behind him. He wanted the woman who had stood between Lily and danger at the aquarium, and then made him choose the law over revenge. Eliana said yes to the trial period. Dante went still, as if moving too quickly might make the moment disappear. He stepped close and asked before touching her face. That question, simple as it was, nearly undid her. She nodded. His kiss was careful at first. Nothing like the desperate one they had shared in his car days earlier. His kiss carried restraint, fear, relief, and something neither of them was ready to name without trembling. When it ended, Dante rested his forehead against hers and whispered that he would earn this. Eliana wanted to believe him. More dangerously, she wanted to help him do it. The next weeks tested every promise. He moved into a house outside the city, beautiful but not showy, with a fenced yard and a maple tree Lily immediately declared magical. Security stayed discreet, though Eliana noticed more than Dante hoped she would. Lily started preschool nearby and piano lessons twice a week, enrolled in evening music classes, her hands shaking the first time she sat at a practice keyboard again. Dante handled business late into the night, often coming home silent and grim. Some nights he wanted to tell her nothing. Some nights she forced him to sit at the kitchen table and speak like a man, not a don. Changing the empire was uglier than Dante had admitted at first. Men loyal to his father resisted every legal transition. They saw Eliana as the reason Dante had become soft. One of them, Vincent Caruso, had been with the family for 30 years and believed he deserved more power than Dante gave him. Eliana noticed his name appearing too often in reports, too often to near shipments Dante had ordered stopped. When she asked about him, Dante dismissed it as old resentment. Eliana did not. She began reading everything Dante allowed her to see, not because she wanted to become part of his criminal world, but because danger ignored women who pretended not to understand it. One afternoon, while Dante was away, a package arrived for Lily. No return address. Inside was a small music box that played a lullaby Eliana's grandmother used to sing. Beneath it lay a photograph of Lily on the preschool playground. Eliana did not scream. She did not freeze. She closed the box, sent Lily to Maria, and called Dante's head of security before calling Dante himself. By the time he arrived, she had already checked the delivery camera, written down the courier plate number, and found a second photo hidden under the lining. This one showed the house from across the street. Eliana's hands were shaking, but her mind was clear. Dante to want to move them back to the penthouse immediately. Eliana refused. Getting back into the cage would teach whoever sent the package that fear still controlled them. She asked who knew the lullaby. Dante said almost no one, and went pale in a way she had never seen. The tune had also been Sophia's favorite. Someone was not only threatening Lily, they were reaching into Dante's grief. That narrowed the suspects. Vincent had known Sophia. Vincent had served Dante's father. Vincent would know exactly where to cut. Eliana watched Dante's fury rise and placed one hand on his chest. Not this time, she said. Instead of sending men to drag Vincent into a basement, Dante agreed to set a trap. Eliana helped design it. They leaked the phone Sophia, linked information that Dante would move Mersham through the old docks one final time before shutting the route down. If Vincent was working with the Vegas, he would bite. Dante hated putting himself in the open. Eliana hated it too. But she understood the difference between courage and recklessness now. She insisted on staying in the security command room, during the operation. Dante wanted her far away. Eliana asked if partnership only counted when she agreed with him. He let her stay. The argument ended there. The trap worked, but not cleanly. Vincent arrived at the docks with Vega men and 2 corrupt officers who had escaped Riley's fall. Dante's team captured most of them, but Vincent vanished before the net closed. Then the house alarm went off. Eliana heard Lily scream through the security feed. For 1 second, the world stopped. Then she moved. She grabbed the emergency phone, locked down the children's wing, and triggered the silent alarm Dante had shown her, but never expected her to use. Maria pulled Lily into the panic room just as 2 masked men broke through the rear entrance. Eliana stayed on the line, guiding security through the house cameras, with a voice she barely recognized as her own. Dante's face on the monitor changed when he realized the attack at the docks had been a distraction. Vincent had gone for Lily. Eliana saw murder enter Dante's eyes. She told him to come home, but not to lose himself on the way. He said nothing, only turned and ran. At the house, security took down 1 intruder near the kitchen. The other reached the hallway outside the panic room. Eliana was there first. She slammed the reinforced door controls, trapping him between 2 locked sections until guards arrived. Lily was sobbing behind the wall, calling for her mother. Eliana pressed her hand against the steel and promised she was right there. When Dante arrived, Vincent was already caught 2 blocks away, dragged from a service van with Lily's school backpack in his hand. Dante stood over him in the driveway, surrounded by men waiting for an order. Eliana came outside with Lily in her arms just in time to see the choice form. Vincent had betrayed him, threatened his child, and used Sophia's memory like a weapon. Every law of Dante's old world demanded blood. Lily hid her face in Eliana's neck. Eliana looked at Dante and said his daughter was watching. Not by blood, maybe not yet by law, but by every choice that mattered. Dante heard her. Dante did not kill Vincent. He did not touch him. He ordered his men to turn Vincent and the evidence over to the federal contacts handling Riley's corruption case. The silence that followed was almost as frightening as violence. His men looked shocked. Vincent laughed, bloody and furious, calling Dante weak. Dante crouched in front of him and said weakness was needing to prove power through death. Then he stood and walked away. Eliana saw what that cost him. She also saw what it gave him. The old Dante would have ended Vincent in the driveway. This Dante chose the future he had promised, even when revenge was standing close enough to reach. After that night, everything changed again. Some of Dante's men left. Some turned themselves into enemies by sunrise, but others stayed, because they understood what Vincent had not. Dante was not becoming weak. He was becoming harder to predict. The legal transition accelerated. Dirty routes were shut down. Old accounts were frozen. Men who wanted blood found themselves cut off from money first, power second, and loyalty last. Eliana did not pretend to understand every move, but she understood the direction. Dante was not magically redeemed. No one with his past could be, but he was choosing differently when it hurt, and that was the only kind of change Eliana trusted. Lily recovered more slowly than everyone wanted to admit. At first, she stopped running ahead in public. She asked twice each night if the doors were locked. When a delivery truck passed the house, she pressed both hands over her ears. Eliana hated the fear in her daughter's eyes, more than any threat she had faced herself. Dante sat outside Lily's bedroom each night, never telling her he was guarding the door. One night, Lily opened it and asked if he was scared too. Dante looked helplessly toward Eliana, who stood at the end of the hallway, and he told Lily the truth. Yes, he was scared. Very scared. Lily took his hand and told him he could sit beside her bed if he wanted. That was the first night she called him Papa. Dante did not cry loudly. He turned his face away, but Eliana saw his shoulders shake once. Healing came in small, uneven steps after that. Lily drew pictures of safe houses with too many locks, then slowly began drawing flowers again. She practiced piano with Eliana, sometimes stopping when a note reminded her of the music box. Eliana never rushed her. Dante never pretended the fear was silly. Together, they taught Lily that being brave did not mean forgetting what happened. It meant knowing she was not alone when she remembered. 6 months after the first night at Bellini's, Eliana stood in front of a mirror wearing a deep blue gown, her hair pinned softly back from her face. She looked healthier now, rested, not untouched by fear but no longer swallowed by it. Dante waited outside the bedroom, trying and failing not to sound impatient. Tonight was the opening of the Sofia Castano Children's Wing at the city hospital, funded through Dante's newly legal foundation. Public appearance as a couple. Gossip had already named Eliana the woman who tamed the city's most dangerous man. She hated that phrase. She had not tamed him. She had challenged him to tame himself. Dante entered wearing a black tuxedo and froze when he saw her. The look on his face made Eliana blush despite everything they had survived. He told her she looked breathtaking. She told him not to start acting charming 5 minutes before they had to leave. He smiled, but something serious waited underneath. Lily was down the hall in a matching blue dress, insisting the puppy needed a bow tie too. Before Eliana could go rescue Maria from the chaos, Dante took her hand. His palm was warm, his fingers scarred. He said there was something he had wanted to ask for weeks. But after Vincent, he knew he had to wait until the house felt safe again. Then Dante Castano lowered himself to one knee. For a heartbeat, Eliana forgot how to breathe. He opened a velvet box, revealing a sapphire and diamond ring, elegant rather than loud, beautiful, because he'd finally learned she did not need to be overwhelmed to be loved. Dante told her the trial period had ended for him long ago, but he would honor it until she was ready. He wanted forever, not ownership. Partnership, not obedience. A family built on truth, even when truth was difficult. He asked her to marry him, to let him spend the rest of his life proving that the man she had helped him become was real. Eliana cried before she answered. Not because of the ring, not because of the money or the house or the life he could give her. She cried because the man kneeling before her was not asking from power. He was asking from vulnerability, and she knew what that cost him. She said yes. Dante rose and kissed her with such relief that she laughed against his mouth. Then Lily burst in, saw the ring, and screamed so loudly the puppy started barking. Dante scooped her onto his hip while Eliana wiped her tears. Lily asked if this meant they were officially a forever family. Dante looked at Eliana first. She nodded. He said yes. The hospital gala was brighter and louder than Eliana expected. Cameras flashed. Donors smiled. Reporters asked careful questions about Dante's foundation, his business transformation, and the woman beside him. Eliana held his arm not as decoration but as his equal. When they unveiled Sophia's portrait at the entrance to the Children's wing, Dante went completely still. The painting showed a bright-eyed girl with a mischievous smile and a stethoscope around her neck, exactly as Maria had described her. Lily slipped her hand into Dante's and whispered that Sophia would like the hospital. Dante swallowed hard and said he hoped so. Eliana had never loved him more than in that moment. But the night was not finished testing them. Just before Dante's speech, Eliana noticed a nurse near the staff corridor staring too long at Lily. The woman's badge was turned backward. Eliana's body reacted before her mind did. She moved toward Lily, smiling so no one around them would panic, and quietly asked Maria to take her to the restroom. The nurse shifted direction. Eliana saw the confirmation in that small movement. She touched Dante's wrist once, their agreed signal. His eyes followed hers. Security began to move, but Eliana stepped into the nurse path first. She asked for directions to the Children's ward, keeping her voice light while her pulse hammered. The woman tried to brush past her. Eliana caught the badge and flipped it over. The photo did not match. The fake nurse reached into her pocket. Eliana shoved a tray of champagne glasses into her path, sending glass and liquid crashing across the floor. The noise turned every camera, every guest, every guard. Dante reached them as security pinned the woman against the wall. Inside her pocket was not a gun, but a syringe and a note with Lily's name on it. The gala froze. Dante's old instinct flashed across his face. Eliana saw it. So did half the city's press. This was another test, and this time the world was watching. Dante did not explode. He wrapped one arm around Eliana, looked at his security chief, and ordered the woman handed to the police, with every camera recording. His voice was calm enough to make people listen. Then he stepped onto the stage anyway. Eliana followed, Lily safe between Maria and two guards backstage. Dante looked out at the crowd and did something no one expected. He admitted that his family had spent years being part of the city's fear. He did not confess crimes. He did not perform innocence. He simply said Sophia's wing was not charity meant to polish a name. It was a debt he could never fully repay. Dante spoke about children who deserved doctors before danger, medicine before money, and futures untouched by the violence adults created. His voice broke once when he said Sophia's name. Eliana stood beside him, steady and proud, because this was not the man who had once taken Lily without asking and called it protection. This was a man choosing accountability in public, restraint under threat, and purpose beyond power. When the applause came, it was not polite. It was uncertain at first, then stronger. Some people clapped for the hospital, some for the speech. Eliana clapped because she knew how close he had come to becoming the man everyone expected, and had chosen not to. Later, in a private room away from the cameras, Dante held Lily so tightly she complained about her dress wrinkling. The fake nurse was tied to the last Vega faction, still angry over the collapse of their deal with Vincent. It was supposed to be a final message: no public life, no clean future, no peace. Eliana listened, then said they would not cancel the wedding. Dante stared at her. She told him fear had made too many decisions for them already. They would improve security. They would be careful. But they would not hand their future to people who only knew how to threaten children. Dante looked at her as if she had become the bravest person he knew. The wedding took place 3 months later in the garden behind their house. Not in a cathedral, not in a ballroom, not in any place chosen to impress powerful men. Lily was the flower girl, wearing a crown of white lilies and carrying a basket she kept swinging too hard. Maria cried before the ceremony even began. Mrs. Patel sat in the front row, proudly telling anyone who would listen that she had known Eliana before all this. Dante stood beneath the arch in a dark suit, looking more nervous than he had ever looked facing enemies. When Eliana walked toward him, he did not look like a king. He looked like a man being given a second life. Their vows were simple. Eliana promised honesty, courage, and love that would not stay silent when silence became dangerous. Dante promised protection, yes, but also trust. He promised to listen before taking control, to choose their family over pride, and to keep building a life Lily could grow inside without fear shaping every room. When he slid the ring onto Eliana's finger, his hand trembled. She squeezed it once, and he steadied. Lily whispered loudly that now she definitely got to keep him, and the guests laughed through tears. Dante laughed too. It was still rare enough that Eliana noticed every time, and still beautiful enough that she hoped she always would. Not turn Dante into an ordinary man. Eliana would never lie to herself about that. There were still guards, difficult meetings, threats that arrived through lawyers instead of broken windows, nights when Dante came home carrying shadows in his face. But there were also breakfasts where Lily wore pajamas inside out, piano music drifting from the living room, and Dante learning how to make pancakes without burning the first three. Eliana continued her music studies and eventually began teaching children at the hospital wing twice a week. The first time she played there, Dante stood at the back of the room, watching her with quiet awe. One afternoon, a year after the night at Bellini's, Eliana visited the hospital and found Dante sitting beside a boy receiving chemotherapy. He was reading badly from a children's adventure book, doing different voices with embarrassing seriousness because the boy had demanded it. Eliana stopped in the doorway. The scene could have been staged for donors, but there were no cameras, no reporters, no board members, just Dante, a tired child in a story. When he looked up and saw her, something unguarded passed across his face. Later, he told her Sophia used to make him read the same way. Eliana kissed his hand and said, maybe some parts of the past could become bridges instead of chains. The final break from the old empire came harder than expected. Dante had one remaining illegal operation tied to men overseas who did not accept polite endings. Closing it meant losing millions and inviting retaliation. Keeping it meant poisoning everything he had promised. For 3 days, Dante barely slept. Eliana did not pressure him with speeches. She simply placed Lily-esque school drawing on his desk. 3 stick figures, 1 puppy, 1 house, and the words "Our safe home" written in uneven letters. Dante stared at it for a long time. Then he picked up the phone and gave the order to shut the operation down permanently, even though the cost would be brutal. The retaliation came through money first. Accounts were attacked. A warehouse burned. Former allies spread rumors that Dante had lost his nerve. He answered with lawyers, auditors, and enough clean evidence to bury men who had thought he would always protect them out of old loyalty. It was not gentle, but it was legal. Eliana saw the difference. So did the city. Slowly the name Castano began to mean something else. Not pure, not innocent. A name with blood behind it could not be washed clean by donations and speeches, but it could be pointed in another direction. Dante did not ask the world to forget. No longer the point. Eliana's own transformation was quieter, but no less important. She was no longer the exhausted waitress waiting for someone else to decide whether she deserved rescue. She practiced piano until her fingers ached. She argued with Dante when he slipped into old habits. She helped design programs for single parents at the hospital, including emergency medicine grants for children like Lily. She still remembered the shame of standing at a pharmacy counter, praying a card would not decline. She wanted fewer mothers to carry that shame alone. Dante funded the program without putting his name on it. Eliana asked why. He said because this one was hers. That answer stayed with her. Lily grew into the house slowly, not all at once. She learned piano faster than Eliana expected, but for months she refused to play the lullaby from the music box. She said it sounded like the bad day. Eliana never forced her. Dante never asked twice. Then one evening, Lily sat at the piano and played the first 3 notes by herself. She stopped, looked frightened, and waited. Eliana sat beside her and played the next 3. Dante stood in the doorway, silent. Together, mother and daughter turned the song from a threat back into a memory, and Dante claimed it was a terrible name, then used it more than anyone else. Years later, Eliana would remember the first time Dante came home from a crisis and did not lock himself in his study. Instead, he found her in the music room and told her everything. Temptation to retaliate, the insult from an old associate, the fear that mercy would invite more threats, and choosing to let someone witness the fight. Eliana listened, and she asked what choice would let him look Lily in the eye tomorrow. Dante closed his eyes, exhaled, and chose that one. It was never perfect, but love, Eliana had learned, was not the absence of darkness. It was refusing to let darkness make every decision. On their second wedding anniversary, Dante took Eliana back to Bellini's after hours. The restaurant was empty except for candles, one table, and the old piano the owner had kept for decoration. Eliana laughed when she saw it. Dante admitted he had bought the restaurant quietly months earlier, not to control the memory, but to close the circle. She told him that was still dangerously close to control. He winced, then said he had arranged it in case she wanted to play there again. And if she hated it, he would sell the place tomorrow. Eliana studied him, then sat at the piano. This time, when she played, it was by choice. Music filled the empty room softly at first, then stronger. Eliana played the song her grandmother had taught her, the same lullaby Vincent had tried to turn into a threat. After the last note, Dante stood very still. He asked where her grandmother had learned that song. Eliana said she did not know, only that her grandmother had worked as a private nurse years ago, before Eliana was born. Dante's face changed. He took out his phone and showed her an old photograph of Sophia in a hospital bed, smiling beside a gentle gray-haired nurse. Eliana felt the breath leave her body. The nurse was her grandmother. For a moment, neither of them spoke. And Dante said her grandmother had been the only nurse who could calm Sophia during the worst nights. She used to hum that lullaby until Sophia fell asleep. Eliana sat frozen at the piano, understanding at last why Dante had reacted so strongly to her name, her hands, her music. He had not known the connection consciously at first, but some part of his grief had recognized the echo. Eliana touched the keys gently. The song did not belong to fear. It had belonged to comfort long before danger stole it. Somehow, their lives had brushed against each other years before they ever met. That discovery changed the way Eliana understood their story. It was not fate in the easy romantic sense. Fate had not paid bills, healed trauma, or made Dante good. But there had been a thread there, thin and strange, running through Sophia's hospital room. Eliana's grandmother's song, Lily's fear, and the piano beneath her hands. Dante said maybe Sophia had sent Eliana to him. Eliana smiled sadly and said, maybe Sophia had sent him a woman stubborn enough to tell him no. Dante laughed softly, then grew quiet. He said he hoped her grandmother would not hate the man he had become. Eliana answered that her grandmother would judge him by what he did next. And the last Vega leader, still free, sent a message through an old Castano contact. He had no army left, no police protection, and no real leverage. What he had was information. The location of Dante's father in Switzerland. If Dante did not meet him alone, the secret would be sold to every enemy who wanted to strike at the old man and reopen the war. Dante's first instinct was to go alone and end it quietly. He even packed a gun before telling Eliana. She found him in the study, saw the weapon, and understood. The old Dante was standing at the door asking to be let back in. Eliana did not beg. She did not cry. She brought Lily downstairs in her pajamas and told Dante to look at his family before he chose. Lily, half asleep and confused, asked if Papa was leaving. Dante's face broke in a way Eliana had never seen. He knelt before Lily, and she placed both small hands on his cheeks. "Don't go be scary," she whispered. "Stay and be Papa." The words hit harder than any threat. Dante closed his eyes. His hand moved away from the gun. Eliana saw the moment he chose. Not because he was no longer dangerous, but because for the first time, love stopped him before violence could start. Dante called his lawyers, his federal contact, and the Swiss security team instead. The Vega leader was arrested before sunrise trying to board a private plane, with forged documents and stolen medical records. Dante did not touch him. He did not need to. When the call ended, Dante sat on the kitchen floor with Lily asleep against his chest, as if his legs had finally given out. Eliana sat beside him. He whispered that he had wanted to kill the man. Eliana said she knew. He looked ashamed. She took his hand and told him the victory was not that he had stopped wanting it. The victory was that he had chosen not to obey that want. Later that night, after Lily fell asleep with her medal still on the nightstand, Dante and Eliana sat on the back porch watching snow gather over the yard. The swing set stood quiet under the porch light. Captain Shark snored inside by the fireplace. Dante asked if she ever wished she had taken Riley's offer and disappeared before all of this became her life. Eliana thought about it carefully. She owed herself that honesty. Then she said there were nights when she had wondered, but Riley's offer had not been freedom. It had been another man using fear to choose her future. What she had now was not perfect, but she had chosen it with open eyes. Dante said he still hated how their story began. The gifts, the surveillance, taking Lily, the way he had mistaken control for care. Eliana did not soften the truth for him. She said he should hate those parts, because they were wrong. Then she took his hand and said what mattered was that he had not stayed that man. Dante bowed his head over their joined hands. Snow fell quietly beyond the porch. Eliana rested against him, not because she needed protection from the world, but because she had found a place beside him that did not require shrinking. That more than wealth or safety was what made it home. Eliana Morgan had once believed survival meant making herself small enough to get through another day. Small enough for unpaid bills. Small enough for Marco's failures. Small enough for exhaustion, shame, and fear. Dante Castano had once believed love meant possession, and protection meant control. They had both been wrong. More from them than desire ever could. It demanded truth when lies were easier, restraint when anger felt righteous, and courage when safety looked like running. Their story began in darkness, with a desperate mother and a dangerous man. But it did not end there, because neither of them allowed the beginning to decide the ending. Years from now, people would still tell different versions of the story. Some would say Eliana saved Dante. Others would say Dante saved Eliana and Lily. The truth was less simple and far more human, and demanded that Dante become worthy of the family he wanted. Dante protected them, yes, but he also let them change him in ways power never could. Lily grew up loved, not untouched by the past, but no longer ruled by it. And whenever Eliana played piano in their home, Dante would stand nearby, listening like a man who knew exactly what grace sounded like. It sounded like a second chance, earned one choice at a time. Every mafia boss story is not only about power, money, revenge, or fear. Beneath the violence and darkness, there is often a painful human lesson about choices, consequences, loyalty, family, and the price of ambition. This story reminds us that no matter how powerful a person becomes, no one can escape the truth forever. Hundreds of people, and make others tremble at the sound of his name. But if his heart is empty, his victory is never complete. The mafia boss in this story represents a man who built his life on control. He believed that fear was stronger than love, that silence was safer than honesty, and that power could protect him from pain. For years, he may have won every battle in the streets, in business, and among his enemies. But the most important battle was never outside him. It was inside his own heart. That is where he truly lost himself. One of the most meaningful lessons from this story is that power without morality becomes a prison. Many people dream of becoming rich, respected, or feared. They think success means having control over others. But real success is not measured by how many people obey you. It is measured by how many lives you protect, how much peace you create, and how much good remains after you are gone. The mafia boss had money, influence, and protection, but he did not have peace. His life shows us that a person can be surrounded by luxury and still feel completely alone. Another important lesson is that loyalty is valuable, but blind loyalty can destroy lives. In the world of crime, loyalty is often treated like the highest law. People are expected to follow orders without question. Never mean giving up your conscience. A loyal person does not simply protect someone's secrets. A loyal person also has the courage to stop someone from destroying themselves. This story teaches us that loyalty without honesty is dangerous. Real loyalty should be connected to truth, respect, and moral responsibility. The story also shows the heavy cost of revenge. Revenge often feels powerful in the beginning. It gives a person the illusion that pain can be answered with pain, but revenge rarely heals anything. Instead, it creates a chain of suffering that keeps growing. One act of revenge leads to another. One betrayal leads to another. In the end, everyone loses something. The mafia boss may have believed that revenge would restore his honor, but what it truly did was steal his humanity piece by piece. This is a powerful reminder that forgiveness is not weakness. Sometimes, forgiveness is the strongest decision a person can make because it breaks the cycle of hatred. Family is another central lesson in this kind of story. Many mafia bosses claim they do everything for family. They say they commit crimes to protect the people they love. But protection without honesty can become another form of harm. A family does not only need money or security. A family needs trust, emotional safety, and love that is not poisoned by fear. If a father, husband, brother, or son becomes powerful but loses the ability to show tenderness, then his family may live in a beautiful house, but still feel trapped inside it. This story reminds us that children and loved ones often pay the price for the choices of powerful men. The mafia boss may think his decisions only affect his enemies, but every secret, every violent act, and every betrayal leaves a shadow over the innocent people around him. That is why one of the strongest educational messages is this: before making a decision, we must ask ourselves who will suffer because of it. A selfish choice may bring temporary success, but it can create long-term pain for the people we love most. Another meaningful point is the danger of pride. Pride can make a person refuse to apologize, refuse to change, and refuse to admit they are wrong. The mafia boss may have spent years believing that saying sorry would make him look weak, but in reality, the ability to apologize is a sign of strength. It takes courage to face the damage we have caused. It takes maturity to admit that we hurt someone, and it takes true character to change before it is too late. The story also teaches that redemption is possible, but it always requires sacrifice. A person cannot simply say they have changed. They must prove it through action. Redemption means accepting responsibility, protecting the innocent, telling the truth, and sometimes losing everything that was built on lies. For a mafia boss, redemption may mean walking away from power, exposing corruption, saving someone he once endangered, or choosing love over control. The path to redemption is painful, because it forces a person to confront the worst parts of themselves. But it is also the only path that can lead to peace. From a human perspective, this story is powerful because it shows that even the hardest heart can still feel pain. Behind the cold eyes of a mafia boss, there may be regret, loneliness, childhood wounds, or a deep fear of being betrayed. This does not excuse his actions, but it helps us understand that broken people often break others when they never learn how to heal. The educational value here is important. Pain should not become an excuse to hurt people. Instead, pain should become a reason to grow, to seek wisdom, and to choose a better path. For viewers, the lesson is not to admire the criminal lifestyle, but to understand its emptiness. The suits, cars, mansions, and power may look attractive from the outside, but behind them there is often fear, guilt, and loss. A life built on violence can never bring true happiness. A life built on lies can never bring true freedom. And a life built on fear can never create real love. In the end, the story of a mafia boss is really a warning. It warns us that every choice has a consequence. It warns us that money cannot buy peace. It warns us that fear cannot replace respect. It warns us that revenge cannot heal a wounded heart. Most importantly, it reminds us that the greatest power a person can have is not the power to control others, but the power to control themselves. The deepest lesson is simple but meaningful. Choose character over pride, love over control, truth over silence, and forgiveness over revenge. No matter how dark a person's past may be, change is possible when they are willing to face the truth. But the longer someone waits, the higher the price becomes. A mafia boss may win the streets, defeat his enemies, and build an empire, but if he loses his soul, he has lost everything. True strength is not found in violence. True strength is found in responsibility, compassion, humility, and the courage to become better before it is too late.